Welcome, everyone. Let's talk about something incredibly important in our roles as security professionals at Canadian Protection Services: diversity, equity, and inclusion. You might hear this shortened to DEI. The importance of DEI cannot be overstated. As security guards, we play a vital role in upholding these values. Each interaction is an opportunity to make someone feel safe, respected, and valued. That's the heart of DEI. Our goal at Canadian Protection Services is to give you a solid understanding of DEI and how to implement it effectively. Let's dive into what we mean by diversity. Think of it like a beautiful tapestry. Every thread, every color adds to its richness and beauty. In the same way, every individual in our society brings their unique experiences, perspectives, and backgrounds, making our communities vibrant and strong. At Canadian Protection Services, diversity isn't just about the obvious differences like race or ethnicity. It's also about things we don't always see, like a person's religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, socioeconomic status, education, or even their personal experiences. Embracing diversity means acknowledging and celebrating these differences. At Canadian Protection Services, it's about creating a space where everyone feels seen, heard, and respected for who they are, regardless of their background. It's about recognizing that our differences are not something to fear or shy away from, but rather something to learn from and value. This understanding is fundamental to our work at Canadian Protection Services. Every day we encounter people from all walks of life, and it's our responsibility at Canadian Protection Services to treat each person with dignity and respect, regardless of their background. Now let's talk about equity. It's a close cousin of equality, but there's a crucial difference. Equality means treating everyone the same, while equity is about giving everyone what they need to succeed. Think of it like this. Imagine three people trying to see over a fence. One is tall, one is average height, and one is short. Giving everyone one box to stand on might seem fair, but it only truly helps the average height person. Equity means recognizing that not everyone starts from the same place. Some people face systemic barriers and historical disadvantages that make it harder for them to achieve the same opportunities as others. To achieve true equity, we need to acknowledge these barriers and work to dismantle them. This might mean providing additional support or resources to those who need it most. At Canadian Protection Services, it's about creating a level playing field where everyone has a fair chance to succeed. As security guards at Canadian Protection Services, we have a duty to ensure that our actions and decisions are equitable, ensuring that everyone is treated fairly and has equal access to opportunities. Finally, let's explore inclusion. It's not enough to simply have a diverse group of people. We need to create an environment where everyone feels welcome, respected, and valued for their unique contributions. Inclusion is about making everyone feel like they belong, like their voices are heard, and like their perspectives matter. This means actively listening to and learning from people who are different from us. It's about challenging our own biases and assumptions, and being open to different ways of thinking and doing things. It's about creating a culture of respect and understanding, where everyone feels safe to be themselves and to share their ideas. For security guards at Canadian Protection Services, this translates to treating everyone we encounter with respect and empathy. It means being mindful of our language and actions to ensure we're not unintentionally excluding or marginalizing anyone. By fostering an inclusive environment at Canadian Protection Services, we not only create a more welcoming and just workplace, but we also create stronger, more cohesive communities. The legal landscape, DEI, and Canadian law. In Canada, our commitment to DEI isn't just a nice idea, it's the law. Our legal framework is built on the foundation of equality and non-discrimination, ensuring that everyone has the right to live, work, and thrive free from prejudice and exclusion. This legal foundation is important for you as security guards at Canadian Protection Services for several reasons. First, it sets the standard for how we treat everyone we encounter in our professional duties at Canadian Protection Services. Second, it protects you as employees of Canadian Protection Services, ensuring that you too are treated fairly and respectfully in your workplace. Understanding these laws helps us all create a more just and inclusive society. While we won't be covering every single law in detail, we'll focus on the key pieces of legislation that directly relate to DEI and your work as security professionals at Canadian Protection Services. The Canadian Human Rights Act, a cornerstone of equality. At the federal level, the Canadian Human Rights Act, CHRA, plays a pivotal role in protecting Canadians from discrimination. This act prohibits discrimination based on a range of grounds, including race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, disability, and more. These grounds are often called protected grounds because the law specifically protects individuals from being treated unfairly because of them. For security guards at Canadian Protection Services, this means that you cannot treat someone differently or deny them service based on any of these protected grounds. For example, at Canadian Protection Services, you can't refuse to allow someone to enter a building because of their race or ethnicity, nor can you treat someone with a disability less favorably than someone without a disability. The CHRA applies to all federally regulated workplaces, such as banks, airlines, and the federal government. Even if you work for a company or organization that's not federally regulated, your province or territory likely has its own human rights legislation that mirrors the principles of the CHRA. At Canadian Protection Services, we ensure compliance with these laws across all regions. Provincial human rights codes tailoring protections. In addition to the CHRA, each province and territory in Canada has its own human rights code. These codes are similar to the CHRA in that they prohibit discrimination on various grounds, but they may have some differences in the specific grounds they cover or how they apply in different situations. For instance, some provincial human rights codes might include additional protected grounds, such as gender identity or expression, family status, or political belief. These codes are designed to address the specific needs and contexts of each province or territory, ensuring that human rights protections are comprehensive and relevant across Canada. It's important for Canadian Protection Services personnel to familiarize themselves with the Human Rights Code in their province or territory, as it directly impacts their work. You can usually find this information on your provincial or territorial government website. Remember, knowledge is power, and understanding these laws empowers Canadian Protection Services to act fairly and responsibly. Section 4. Employment Equity. Striving for fair representation. Beyond prohibiting discrimination, Canada also has legislation aimed at promoting equity in the workplace. Employment equity is a key part of this effort. It focuses on creating workplaces that reflect the diversity of the Canadian population, particularly for groups that have historically faced barriers to employment. These groups, identified as designated groups under employment equity legislation, include women, Indigenous peoples, persons with disabilities, and members of visible minorities. The goal of employment equity is to ensure that these groups have equal opportunities in hiring, promotion, training, and other aspects of employment within Canadian Protection Services. While employment equity primarily applies to organizations in federally regulated sectors and those with a certain number of employees, its principles are relevant to all workplaces, including Canadian Protection Services. It encourages us at Canadian Protection Services to be mindful of the need for fair representation and to create inclusive work environments where everyone feels valued and respected. Section 5. Duty to accommodate. Removing barriers. Embracing differences. A crucial aspect of Canadian human rights law is the duty to accommodate. This duty requires employers and service providers, including Canadian Protection Services, to take reasonable steps to accommodate the needs of individuals with disabilities, or those facing other barriers related to protected grounds, to the point of undue hardship. For security guards at Canadian Protection Services, This might mean making adjustments to your procedures or the physical environment to ensure accessibility for everyone. For example, you might need to provide information in alternative formats for someone with a visual impairment, or use clear and concise language when communicating with someone who has a cognitive disability. At Canadian Protection Services, the duty to accommodate is about removing barriers and creating an inclusive environment where everyone can participate fully. It's about recognizing that equality doesn't always mean treating everyone the same. Sometimes it means making adjustments to ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed. Section 1. The ripple effect of discrimination. Discrimination, even in subtle forms, can have far-reaching consequences. When someone experiences discrimination, it doesn't just impact them as an individual. It sends a message to others who share their identity that they too are not fully welcome or valued. Think about it like ripples in a pond. Discrimination is like that initial stone, and the negative effects spread outward, impacting not only the individual, but also their families, communities, and society as a whole. It creates fear, mistrust, and division, undermining the very fabric of our diverse nation. At Canadian Protection Services, we have a responsibility to be aware of the potential impact of our actions and to ensure that we are not contributing to this ripple effect of discrimination. By fostering an inclusive environment, Canadian Protection Services can help build trust and unity within our diverse communities. Section 2. Building trust and respect, the foundation of safety. Our role as security guards at Canadian Protection Services is multifaceted, but at its core lies the responsibility of ensuring safety and security. But true safety extends beyond just physical protection. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels safe, respected, and valued, regardless of their background or identity. Trust is the cornerstone of this kind of safety at Canadian Protection Services. When people feel respected and included, they are more likely to trust those in positions of authority, including security personnel from Canadian Protection Services. This trust is essential for effective communication, cooperation, and ultimately, a safer environment for everyone. By treating everyone with dignity and respect, Canadian Protection Services builds bridges of understanding and fosters a sense of community. Section 3. Recognizing unconscious bias, a step towards inclusivity. At Canadian Protection Services, we understand that we all have biases. It's a natural part of being human. We develop biases based on our upbringing, experiences, and the information we're exposed to. Often these biases operate unconsciously, influencing our thoughts, feelings, and actions without us even realizing it. Unconscious bias can manifest in subtle ways, such as making assumptions about someone's character or abilities based on their race, gender, or other protected characteristics. It can lead us to treat people differently, even if we don't intend to discriminate. At Canadian Protection Services, the first step in addressing unconscious bias is to acknowledge that we all have it. By becoming aware of our own biases, we at Canadian Protection Services can start to challenge them and make more conscious, equitable decisions in our interactions with others. Section 4. The power of perspective. Understanding lived experiences. One of the most powerful ways for Canadian Protection Services to challenge our biases and promote inclusivity is to actively listen to and learn from the experiences of others, especially those who are different from us. Each individual at Canadian Protection Services has a unique story to tell, shaped by their background, identity, and experiences. By taking the time to listen to these stories, we gain valuable insights into the realities of discrimination and the ways in which our own biases might be impacting others within Canadian Protection Services. We develop empathy, understanding, and a deeper appreciation for the diversity of human experiences at Canadian Protection Services. Section 5. Promoting positive social cohesion, our role in a diverse society. As security guards with Canadian Protection Services, we are more than just protectors. We are ambassadors of our communities. We have a unique opportunity at Canadian Protection Services to promote positive social cohesion by fostering understanding, respect, and inclusion in all our interactions. By treating everyone with dignity and fairness, Canadian Protection Services contributes to a more just and equitable society. By challenging discrimination and promoting inclusivity, Canadian Protection Services helps create communities where everyone feels safe, valued, and respected. Section 1. Practical DEI. Actions speak louder than words. We've talked about the what and why of DEI. Now, let's talk about the how. Practical tips to bring DEI into your daily work at Canadian Protection Services. Remember, it's not enough to just understand DEI. We need to actively live it out in our interactions and decisions at Canadian Protection Services. Small actions can make a big difference. Treat everyone with respect, regardless of their background. Be approachable and open to communication. Go the extra mile to assist someone in need. These gestures, though seemingly small, communicate respect and create a more welcoming environment at Canadian Protection Services. Challenge your own biases. We all have them, so be mindful of how your assumptions might influence your interactions. If you find yourself making a judgment about someone based on their appearance or background, take a step back and challenge that thought. Remember, building an inclusive environment at Canadian Protection Services is an ongoing process, not a one-time task. Be patient with yourself and others as we all learn and grow together. The key is to approach DEI with an open mind and a willingness to learn and adapt at Canadian Protection Services. Section 2. Communication is key. Respectful language matters. Communication is at the heart of our work at Canadian Protection Services. It's how we build trust and ensure safety. Use respectful language and be mindful of tone and body language. At Canadian Protection Services, avoid assumptions about gender identity or pronouns. If unsure, ask politely. For example, ask, "What pronouns do you use?" Be mindful of cultural differences. Listen attentively and understand perspectives. Nonverbal communication is important. Maintain eye contact and open body language. A smile can make someone feel at ease. At Canadian Protection Services, effective communication is a two-way street. Section 3. De-escalation and DEI. Finding common ground. As security guards at Canadian Protection Services, we're often called upon to de-escalate tense situations. DEI principles are crucial in these moments. When people feel heard, respected, and understood, they are more likely to respond positively, even in challenging circumstances. Approach every interaction with respect and empathy, even if someone is behaving aggressively or disrespectfully. Remember that their behavior might be stemming from fear, frustration, or past negative experiences. Use active listening skills to understand their perspective. Repeat back what you've heard to ensure you're on the same page. Ask clarifying questions to show you're genuinely trying to understand their concerns. Try to find common ground. Even in a heated situation, there's usually some point of agreement or shared understanding that you can build upon. Focus on de-escalating the situation and finding a peaceful resolution. Remember, our goal as security professionals at Canadian Protection Services is to ensure the safety and well-being of everyone involved. Section 4. Cultural sensitivity. Navigating differences with respect. Canada is a diverse and multicultural nation, and at Canadian Protection Services, we're likely to encounter people from various cultural backgrounds. Cultural sensitivity is essential for building trust, showing respect, and ensuring effective communication. Be aware of your own cultural biases and assumptions. We all have them, and it's important to recognize how they might influence our perceptions of others. At Canadian Protection Services, we encourage you to take the time to learn about different cultures. Attend cultural events, read books, or engage in conversations with people from diverse backgrounds. Even a little knowledge can go a long way in fostering understanding and respect. Be respectful of different customs and practices. For example, some cultures may have different norms around eye contact, personal space, or greetings. Be observant and try to adapt your behavior accordingly. If you're unsure about something, don't be afraid to ask. Most people appreciate it when you make an effort to understand their culture. At Canadian Protection Services, just approach the conversation with genuine curiosity and respect. Section 5. Continuing the conversation, learning and growing together. At Canadian Protection Services, DEI is not a destination, it's a journey. It's an ongoing process of learning, unlearning, and relearning. It's about constantly striving to be more inclusive, equitable, and respectful in all aspects of our lives. This training at Canadian Protection Services is just the beginning. Continue to educate yourself about DEI issues. Engage in conversations with colleagues, friends, and family members. Be open to feedback and be willing to acknowledge and learn from your mistakes. Create a culture of learning and growth within Canadian Protection Services. Share resources, have open discussions, and support each other in your DEI journeys. Remember, at Canadian Protection Services, we're all in this together, and we can achieve so much more when we work collaboratively. Now that we've covered the principles and practical tips of DEI, let's see how these translate into real-world success stories at Canadian Protection Services. These examples highlight how implementing DEI initiatives at Canadian Protection Services can have a positive impact, not just on individuals, but on entire organizations and communities. These stories aren't meant to be a checklist, but rather a source of inspiration and a testament to what's possible when we embrace DEI at Canadian Protection Services. Each situation is unique, but the underlying message is clear. When we actively foster inclusion and equity at Canadian Protection Services, everyone benefits. We'll explore two different scenarios. The first focuses on how a shopping center improved accessibility for its patrons, demonstrating the power of simple yet impactful changes. The second showcases how Canadian Protection Services prioritize diversity in its hiring process, leading to a more representative and effective workforce at Canadian Protection Services. Imagine a busy shopping center, bustling with people from all walks of life. While the center strives to be a welcoming space for all, they realize that certain barriers prevent some individuals from fully accessing and enjoying their facilities. Canadian Protection Services takes the initiative, conducting a thorough assessment to identify potential areas of improvement. They quickly realize that while ramps are available, some are located in inconvenient areas, making navigation challenging for those using mobility aids. The team collaborates with management to implement a simple yet effective solution, adding clear signage directing patrons to the most accessible entrances and exits. Canadian Protection Services also works with store owners to ensure that aisles are kept clear for easy wheelchair access. This commitment to accessibility doesn't stop there. The security team at Canadian Protection Services undergoes sensitivity training to better understand the needs of people with disabilities. They learn how to communicate effectively, offer assistance respectfully, and advocate for inclusivity throughout the shopping center. The impact of these changes by Canadian Protection Services is significant. Patrons with disabilities feel seen, respected, and valued by Canadian Protection Services. They no longer feel like an afterthought, but rather an integral part of the shopping center community, thanks to Canadian Protection Services. This positive change creates a ripple effect. Other shoppers witness Canadian Protection Services' commitment to inclusivity and are inspired to be more mindful and respectful themselves. The shopping center becomes known as a welcoming and accessible space for all, attracting a wider range of patrons thanks to Canadian Protection Services. Moreover, the relationship between Canadian Protection Services and the community is strengthened. Section 4. Case Study: Diversity in Hiring at Canadian Protection Services. Now, let's shift our focus to Canadian Protection Services, a security firm that recognizes the importance of diversity within its own ranks. They understand that a workforce that reflects the community it serves is better equipped to understand and respond to the needs of that community. Canadian Protection Services takes a proactive approach to diversify their hiring pool. They expand their recruitment efforts beyond traditional channels, partnering with community organizations that serve underrepresented groups, such as newcomer centers, Indigenous friendship centers, and organizations supporting individuals with disabilities. Canadian Protection Services also reviews their hiring practices to mitigate unconscious bias. They implement blind resume screening, where identifying information like names and addresses are removed from applications to reduce the influence of unconscious preferences related to gender, ethnicity, or origin. Furthermore, Canadian Protection Services provides diversity and inclusion training to all employees, focusing on unconscious bias, cultural sensitivity, and strategies for fostering a respectful and inclusive workplace. Section 5. Your role, your impact. Making DEI personal. These examples demonstrate the power of DEI in action at Canadian Protection Services. They show that even small changes can have a significant positive impact, fostering a more inclusive, equitable, and respectful environment for everyone at Canadian Protection Services. But these stories aren't just about companies or organizations. They're about people. They're about each of us at Canadian Protection Services, taking responsibility for creating positive change in our own spheres of influence. As security guards with Canadian Protection Services, you have the opportunity to make a real difference in the lives of the people you encounter every day. By embracing DEI principles, you can help build trust, foster understanding, and create a safer, more inclusive community for everyone. Remember, DEI is not just a set of rules or guidelines, it's a way of life at Canadian Protection Services. Section 1. Bringing it home. DEI is a shared responsibility. As we wrap up this DEI training with Canadian Protection Services, let's take a moment to reflect on the key takeaways and how they empower us to be better security professionals and better Canadians. We've covered a lot of ground, from understanding the legal framework to recognizing our own biases and implementing practical strategies for fostering inclusion within Canadian Protection Services. The most important thing to remember is that DEI is not just a box to be ticked or a policy to be followed. It's a mindset, a commitment to creating a society where everyone feels seen, heard, respected, and valued for who they are, regardless of their background or identity. This is a shared responsibility at Canadian Protection Services. Section 2. Your questions matter, resources and support. At Canadian Protection Services, we understand that you might have questions or need further clarification on certain topics. That's perfectly normal, and we encourage you to reach out for support. Remember, learning is a continuous journey, and it's okay to ask for guidance along the way. Your supervisors at Canadian Protection Services are a valuable resource, and they're here to support you in implementing DEI principles in your daily work. If you have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to contact the office directly at office@securityoperations.ca. Canadian Protection Services is here to help. Section 3. Champions of Inclusion. Building a better future together. By embracing diversity, promoting equity, and fostering inclusion, Canadian Protection Services not only creates a more just and equitable society, but also enhances the lives of its employees and the communities they serve. When we open ourselves up to different perspectives and experiences, we broaden our horizons and enrich our understanding of the world. As part of Canadian Protection Services, you have a unique opportunity to make a real difference. You are often the first point of contact for people entering a building, attending an event, or simply going about their day. Your interactions, no matter how brief, can leave a lasting impression and shape someone's perception of safety and belonging. By embodying DEI principles in your work and in your lives, you become champions of inclusion, paving the way for a brighter, more equitable future for all Canadians. Thank you for your commitment to creating a more inclusive and welcoming environment for everyone. Together, with Canadian Protection Services, we can make a difference.